Today is Friday, July 13th, 2018. We are interviewing Robert Bucher at the American Legion's 100th annual convention in Springfield, Illinois. Robert is 74 years old, having been born on July 16th, 1944. Happy birthday, Robert.
Thank you.
My name is Jeannie Urbanik, and I will be the interviewer. Michelle will be the court reporter for this interview. Would you please state for the recording what branch of the service you are in?
I had the privilege of serving in the United States Air Force.
Could you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I was born in Chicago and raised in the northern suburbs. I went to school, finished college, and joined the military. I have hobbies. I'm a shooter, and I raced motorcycles. I drove hot cars. And I like being on the crazy side and enjoying life the best I can.
So being on the crazy side, those hot cars were actually souped up, not stolen?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you for asking.
I like to clarify.
Well, actually, when I was in college, one of my good college buddies, his dad owned a Plymouth dealer in Chicago. And I bought a 1964 Savoy Plymouth. Savoy was the cheapest thing you could get. It had no options whatsoever except for a big 426 engine in it. And it was just a hot car.
Sounds like it. Now, you said you graduated from college. Did you work before you went into the Army or just right away?
I entered into what was called a DEP, Delayed Enlistment Program, because I was about to be drafted out of my senior year. So I enlisted, in that program in March and then graduated in May, but I didn't go into the service until December. So that time that I had, that 9 months in between, I worked as an engineer in Chicago.
So that's what your degree's in then?
Yes.
Awesome. When you left to serve, who did you leave behind family-wise? Did you have siblings, spouse,
I had an
sweetheart?
older brother, 2 years older, who had served in the Marines. And I have a sister who was 16 years younger.
Wow.
And that was the immediate family. So,
And your parents, did either one of them serve?
no, my dad missed the World War II because he had an ear problem. So that way I would be proud to say I'm not a boomer, because I was born in 44, because my dad didn't have to go into the service.
Well, how did your family feel when you did? Were they on board?
I think they were very proud. We were always a patriotic family. We fly the flag, as I still do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so they were very proud.
When you enlisted, had you previously chosen your branch of service? Were you?
No, you know what is, after racing motorcycles and being a little crazy, as I said, I thought the Air Force would be a place for me. So I went to the local recruiter and I took a battery of tests to see if I would qualify to be a pilot. So I took all those tests, I passed them. I had to go for a physical to make sure I could see well enough, and I passed, and that's what I went on to become.
Well, that's awesome. Where did you do your basic training? Did you do it stateside or?
Yeah, that was stateside, and I went right into OTS, Officers Training School, and that was at Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio.
And then how long were you here or there? I mean,
that was a 12-week class, as I recall. 6 weeks as an underclassman, and then when we were upperclassmen for another 6 weeks, and then we got our commission.
Having just come out of your senior year, you were well acquainted with upperclassmen.
Yes.
Okay, so what was it like when you left for training camp? I mean, were you psyched up and ready? Had you had any idea what you were walking into?
No. It was a complete surprise, but I was in a very good physical shape, so that didn't present any problems for me. I think it's just the discipline of military life, sleeping in bunk beds, 4 people to a room and all that, which didn't really bother me. But it was a little bit of it was a different.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you about next. How did you feel about the restrictions and the orders and the rules? Was that an easy thing for you to adapt to, or was that a little more difficult?
Well, being an engineer, I'm into details and, all the minor things. So abiding by rules and living a very, regimented life, that fit me well. No problem.
That's wonderful. Do you have any instructors that stick out in your mind?
Yes, my instructor pilot, his name was Joe Selleck. And Joe had 5,000 hours in combat Vietnam time. And an interesting episode that happened is one of the pilot training things that we do is what's called an out and back or a round robin. And we flew from my training base in Phoenix, Arizona, back to the Glenview Naval Air Station, which is just a few miles from my home. And when we were supposed to stop for an intermediate refueling, the base we were supposed to stop at, a plane had just crashed. So beside being a student pilot and looking down at an airfield that had a fireball on it, we refueled somewhere else, but we picked up a 200-knot tailwind. So when we refueled and got to Glenview, we had a ton of fuel left. So it's still a training exercise. So we did a number of touch and goes and landings and all that until we, finally ended. But my parents were there watching. And when we deplaned and my mom's, I introduced him to Joe, he says, "Why did you have to do so many landings?" He said, "The kid just couldn't get it right." And he said, "I made him kept doing it until he could get it right." And that remained the story through the entire family, that I just couldn't land the airplane.
Oh, that's priceless. When you were done with your training, did you go on leave or did you go immediately into active duty?
Yeah. No, from there, maybe I'm a little wrong in the order of things, but we went up to Washington for a 2-week survival school. And after the survival school, then it came back to Dyess Air Force Base in Abilene, Texas. And there we had additional training that even though I was a pilot, you had to have training for your specific airplane. So this way I had, I don't know how long it was, a couple months or something, but there was training for that airplane.
What did you fly?
I flew what's called a Charlie 7 Alpha, a C-7A Caribou, de Havilland DH-4.
The whole time?
No, that's what I flew in Vietnam.
Okay.
And I really enjoyed it. And when I came back stateside, then I flew B-52s out of Carswell in Fort Worth, Texas.
Wow. Now, you talked about your basic training and you talked about Vietnam. Where all did you serve after basic training? We don't have to go through that again, but Vietnam and...
Okay. Well, that was the only theater of war I was in. And coming back, again, now going to Carswell, as I said, I had to go for specific airplane training. I went to a base in California for B-52 training. And then came back in, Carswell to fly out of there.
What was it like serving in Vietnam? Were you up in the air most of the time? Did you?
Well, in flying the Caribou, it was really like an LCL truck service, that we did everything. We did medevac, dead bodies, rations, ammunition, resupply, jeeps, passengers. I mean, just whatever would fit in a truck was what we did. And we worked for our agency was called ALC, and I'm not even sure what it stands for, but when we would take off that morning, and I'm just going to use stateside examples. They say, "Well, okay, I want you to fly over to Wilmette and pick up a package there," and then they say, "Okay, now I want you to go to Evanston and drop this off and do that." So every day it was a different mission, different bases. And what was interesting about the Caribou is it was a short field landing and takeoff.
Oh.
So we landed into some runways that were like 300 feet long. And the grass and gravel, it was very interesting.
Oh my goodness. Did you see a lot of combat then or little?
A little, I would say. I mean, we would get bullet holes in the airplane from time to time and things like that.
Wow.
So,
What was the, especially flying, what was the weather like while you were over there?
it was hot in the monsoon, yes.
Oh my goodness. Did that make the flying much more difficult?
We had one situation. Now, we had onboard radar, and we were doing an approach into somewhere, and the controller told us, go this way. and I'm looking at the radar, and I can say, well, this is right into a thunderstorm.
Oh my
And we
goodness.
turned on the carburetor heat or whatever it was you used to, and we lost an engine in going through the weather that they put us into.
Oh my
So,
goodness.
it makes things interesting.
Yeah, that's what I was just gonna say. I imagine that was interesting and a
Yeah.
little bit scary at the same time. Well, okay, now these are some off the war aspect of it, but okay, coming from Chicago where there's a restaurant on every corner and the food is phenomenal, what was the food like over there?
Well, I have an interesting story about that.
Good
So
deal.
your immediate question is answered. The food was great because we ate at the old club.
Okay.
We didn't have rations. But we went into a base one day, and the base had been under small arms attack that morning. So we landed, and we wanted to get out of there quickly. And what we normally did, if you wanted to get out quickly, we'd have the engineer unstrap the packages except for forward restraint. We'd come in, we'd land, and as soon as we hit down, we'd throw it into reverse, we'd back up on the runway, and once we reached the beginning of the runway, we'd holler to him, green light, green light, green light, and throw it into forward power, and we'd take off. So that's what we did to get out of there. Well, as we're taking off, I hear boom, 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 and I thought it was the engineer shooting my machine gun. And then out of the corner of my eye, I see a needle dropping. And I said, okay, number 2, we lost an engine. So we turned around and we came right on back. Well, the base commander was very upset because, they had an airplane on the ground. We were sitting out there. And he sent some airmen out to bring us meals. And it was rations, probably World War I surplus,
Oh my
who knows
goodness.
what it was. Maybe it was from the Civil War, hardtack, I'm not sure. But we had flight lunches, and flight lunches are made fresh daily. So we tell them I'd like a ham sandwich with, provolone cheese,
Wow.
and we had an apple, and candy bar and all that. We were afraid to pull our lunches out because we thought they'd shoot us to take the lunches. So we ate the meals that they gave us. I said, oh God, this is horrible. How can people eat this?
Oh my gosh, you
So-
talk a lot about we. Did you make a lot of friends when you were in the Army? I mean, sorry, excuse me, in the Air Force?
Yeah. And it was because what would happen is I got to know the mechanics at all the different bases we would go to because, they're the ones who take care of the airplanes. And so we met a lot of them, and then also the LC, which was the people who told us to go here and there. I met a lot of those people just so they could attach a face to the name.
Yeah. Did you guys go on leave together? And if so, where'd you go?
We did an R&R. I went with friends, all the enlisted guys that were mechanics. We went to Hawaii for the one R&R. And then another one, we went to Bangkok. And they all wanted to go there, and I said, okay, I'll go with you. So that was fun.
Oh, it sounds like it. Were you able to catch any USO shows? Any entertainers that might have come your way?
No, I didn't,
Really?
but we did have an opportunity to do what we called a Santa-boo. And the airplane being called a Caribou, it had a large radome on the front of it, like a bulbous nose. And what they would do at Christmas time is they would paint it up like that was the red nose on a reindeer. And then we would get the donut dollies, which I think is USO girls. But we'd get the donut dollies on the plane, and then we'd go to forward bases, and they would serve, coffee and donuts and things like that. But I never got to see Bob Hope or...
But other people got to see entertainment courtesy of you. That's
Okay,
awesome.
yeah.
That's wonderful. Are there any other particularly humorous things you remember about the leaves or the shows or painting of the planes?
No, but I have a lot of anecdotal stories that were
You know
interesting.
what? We love those too.
We would carry rations,
Hmm.
and steaks came in a large cardboard box, maybe 2 feet by 3 feet, and there were 3 steaks deep. And anytime you'd carry rations, you had to have a courier with you. So as soon as we load all the food on, we said, okay, we know what's happening here. So we'd get airborne, we're going somewhere, and I'd go over and get the guy up. I said, did you ever fly an airplane? No. God, co-pilot, get out of here. Let him up here. That was his cue. And he'd go in and rifle a bunch of steaks out and throw them into our bag. So, and that way, so we'd have steaks that night. So,
Awesome. Do you, go ahead.
no, I guess I shouldn't say that because we were.
You already
Well, you know what was bad about it, and I don't know that it mattered,
No.
is we were taking food from the people who were marching through the rice paddies and you know, really doing the war action. So we felt badly for a few seconds.
Until that first bite?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure. Do you keep in touch with any of your,
Yeah, no. And I'll tell
Really?
you why that is, Jeannie. Right now with our American Legion, I see a lot of the, you know, the Army troops who do stay close and all that. Because I was in a airplane squadron, everybody was gone all the time. So we didn't
That
really
makes
have an
sense.
opportunity to do a lot of bonding. I mean, we knew everybody and all that, but it was difficult to develop good friendships. So,
I imagine it would be.
yeah.
Did you receive any citations or awards or recognitions, as a result of your service?
Okay, I did receive a Distinguished Flying Cross, and I have the Air Medal with the 4 oak leaf clusters. I have a unit citation, and I have a marksmanship badge. But I have an interesting story about the marksmanship badge.
Good.
I was a competition shooter before I went into the service. So I wasn't good, but I could hit the target from time to time. So when I got to my pilot training base, I went over to see the sergeant to get on the pistol team. And he said, no, you're here to fly, you know, you cannot be on the team. So about 3 months later, it's time for us to do the shooting. So I show up there, and all of the targets, it was a standard silhouette target, so just a big black, you know, blob. And all the targets were, you know, turned this way, so then when you're about to shoot, they rotate. So there's, you know, 50, 60 of us shooting, whatever it is, and the targets all turn, and I had an 8-inch circle. And that was, and I'm looking at it, so wow, that's interesting, you know. So in order to get your marksmanship badge, which I had already gotten at the officers training school, you had to have 100 out of 100 in the silhouette target. Well, I did get all 100 in the 8-inch circle. So the sergeant comes up to me afterward, and he said, I've been waiting for you. So on your flight suits, there's a pocket at the calf. So I reach into the pocket and I pull out the gun. And I said, this is the gun I shot. And I reach in the other pocket and I said, this is the gun you gave me when I walked in. So I actually shot that with my own gun, which is an identical model.
Wow.
But mine was all sighted in. I was familiar with it and all that. And so
You could have kept that a secret, huh?
yeah. So and he didn't say anything.
Well, sure.
So,
Oh, my goodness. Let's talk a little bit about when you were discharged. Did you know it was coming? What were you doing
Yeah,
when you
you
found out
know
you were
what?
going home?
well, actually, I put in for what was called a DOS, and that's a date of separation.
Okay.
And what it was is the way the service works is you have a basic commitment, 2 years, 4, 5, 8 years, whatever it is. Well, anytime you do an additional training as an officer, at least I'm not sure in the enlisted ranks, but you pick up an additional commitment. So by entering the DOS, I was basically telling them, okay, I'm going to get out when my current commitments are over.
And what did you leave the Army as? What rank? I mean, the Air Force. What
Yeah,
rank? I'm sorry. I keep doing that.
I was a captain.
Awesome. Awesome. When were you discharged? They call it muster when you, in the Army. Is there a word?
Mustard's something else.
Well, that's when you,
Isn't that what you put on hamburgers?
that's
Oh, no, that's
my
mustard.
thing.
That's mustard.
I know, right?
No, a muster normally means a gathering together. That, you know, okay,
Okay.
muster the troops means, you know, bringing
Okay.
together. Something
Okay.
like that. But I got out just before, between Christmas and New Year's of 1972.
Wow.
And the same with the day that I actually went in was right between Christmas and New Year's. So,
Wow. And did you go back home to Chicago?
yeah.
What's the
Mhm.
first thing you did when you got back home?
I unloaded 9 motorcycles from my trailer.
There's got to be a story with where you got 9
Oh, okay.
motorcycles.
Well, I think I'd mentioned before I went into service, I raced motorcycles.
Mhm.
And so in the 50s and 60s, I did what's called flat track motorcycle racing. And then in the 60s and 70s, I did motocross. And while I was stationed at Carswell, we had time off. I did, some amateur racing there. And I just had all these bikes. So I really
Wow.
had not planned on going back home. I had some other plans in Indiana, and I wanted to go home to drop off the bikes. So I went home, and then the things just changed that I stayed there and got a job.
What did you do?
I was an engineer.
I know, but did you go right back to the job?
No,
Okay.
no. It was sort of interesting that I applied for 2 jobs, and both of them said, you want to start Monday. And I chose the one, it was lesser pay, but it was within walking distance of my house.
Awesome.
Actually, I drove a dirt bike across the field.
Oh my goodness.
And
Back to your parents' house, or did you?
Yes, my parents'
Okay,
house.
Okay.
Yeah. And I held that same job for 38 years.
It was
Yeah.
definitely the better choice.
Yeah. And my former boss, who I believe is 89 at this point, I still have lunch with him once a month.
That's wonderful.
So,
What kind of reception did you get when you returned home? Did you get like hero's welcome, or was there any big deal made of it?
No.
Really?
No, I just returned. I mean, my parents were, proud
I'm
and
thrilled.
happy.
Yes.
But as you probably know, that coming back from Vietnam was not a great experience
Right.
for anybody.
Oh my goodness. And so you worked for that company for 38 years. Is that where you retired from?
Yes.
Awesome. And how long have you been retired?
I was 66 when I retired, so a little bit of math. I guess that's 7 years.
8 years?
8 years.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Let's talk about the American Legion.
Mm-hmm.
You are very involved in that, and
Yes.
you just smile when you talk about it. And I
Oh,
love your hat
okay.
and all the medals on it. When did you become involved?
Actually, it was recently. I've been with the Legion for 5 years.
I'll be
Because afterward, I was tied up with my own activities,
Sure.
and I really didn't think too much about the fraternal organizations. And then I decided that it was about time to do that, so I joined the Legion. And our former commander appointed me as adjutant of the post, of which I still am, and will probably never lose that position because I think I do a good job. And I'm now the senior vice for the district. So I'm very active. I head up a number of the committees and activities.
That's what I was going to ask
Yeah.
next. The American Legion is very involved in a lot of community.
Yeah.
Or goings on. And
Yes.
are there particular ones that are your favorites that you
Yes.
definitely participate in?
Well, I am the chairman and organizer of what's called Gifts for Yanks. And we have 5 nursing homes in our area, and we have 72 veterans. So
Wow.
we know all of them. And what we do is we go and visit them, and we ask them what they want for Christmas. And we make the list up. And then I have made a deal with one of the local vendors that I can go buy shoes and pants and socks and watches or whatever they want, and they give me a great discount. And so then we package all of those things up, and through the auxiliary and some other organizations, we get like little lap, knit thing, I don't know what a warmer or something.
Sure.
We get different hats and books and games and puzzles. So we put all of that together as a package, and then we take that to the vets personally in Christmas as their name on the package. And now I've been providing a lunch with them. And again, with a large vendor, I've worked out a deal that we get all the choice of sandwiches at a little bit of a reduced rate.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So with the Legions, I do that. We have one of the local churches puts on what they call a community dinner, and it's just for people who need help. I'm in charge of that. And then I serve on the color guard. I take care of all of the weaponry, as you could guess. For
I wonder. Sure.
Yeah, I do all that for our post. And I don't know, there's a couple other things I do.
And you've only been with the Legion 5 years, and
Yeah,
you've packed all this much into it, and you're just a youngster.
Yeah,
You're going to be busy
Yeah.
for a long time.
yeah. I do the car show also.
Ooh, awesome.
And it's, I was a project manager in my job. So I have some minimal, organizational skills, but I mean, I know how to do things.
Oh, my
So,
goodness. Now, besides the convention for the American Legion,
Yeah.
do you ever participate in any of the Air Force reunions or any of your particular squadron reunions?
I did not go to it. We
Okay.
did have one a few years ago, and I opted out.
Okay.
First of all, I was in Las Vegas, and in my job, I averaged 162 nights a year in a hotel.
Oh,
So I traveled all around the world and the country. I've been in all 50 states.
wow.
And I just was not up to another trip. I was close to
Sure.
divorce court if I went on another trip.
And again, my next question. After the war, did you marry? Do you have children?
I don't have children,
Okay.
and I did marry. And without going into a big story, but after 16 years of what I thought was a great marriage, my wife left, and I remarried, and we've been happily married now for 27 years, or 28 years.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. That is wonderful. Congratulations on that, as well
Thank
as
you.
your birthday. Now looking back, when you came out, I should have asked this earlier, but we'll jump back just ever so slightly. And you had gone into a job with two nice job offers. Did you have any trouble readapting? Were there any services that you would have needed provided, or have you since then been in contact with anybody for services provided? Has insurance been okay? And or did you have any problems with any post service organizations or necessities?
Okay. Not really. I acclimated well right back into civilian life.
Excellent.
And, I did take some things under the GI Bill while I was still in the service. And I didn't have a single engine license because all I flew were multi-engine.
Wow.
So I took flying lessons for a single engine license.
I bet that was kind of ironic, wasn't
Well,
it?
it was funny because where I was stationed at a SAC base, the runways are 16,000 feet long. And I did not tell the instructor pilot of my Vietnam experience. So he told me one day, well, we're going to go to some short fields today. So I thought, okay. So we go to a little runway, it's 3,200 feet, and we do some landings and all that. And then I said, where is this short field? And he's like, what? He says, here you're flying on 16,000
Sure.
feet. And then I told him, I said, oh, this is what I flew. And I said, I thought you were talking like, 600 feet or 800 feet or something.
Oh,
So,
my goodness.
yeah. So,
Oh, that's
so that was
awesome.
fun.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Are there any other stories or anything that you want to share with us?
Well, I could give you
Anecdotes?
some anecdotal things from
Okay,
Vietnam.
that would be awesome.
All right. One day, we were unloading rations, and the truck that was picking it up ran into the airplane.
Oh, my gosh.
So there was no real damage, but it was a fender bender. So I had to write an incident report. And part of the incident report, if you're familiar with the military, that was always, what can we do to preclude this from happening again? Well, the cause of the accident, which I wrote in my book, is the truck that they were bringing up, the clutch and the brake, the rubber pads that are on it. Well, there's no more rubber pads on it, right? It's just steel. Well, he had just been delivering stock pots full of spaghetti sauce. So the spaghetti sauce spilled all over the thing. Anyway, the driver, as he was backing up to the airplane, his foot slipped off the clutch or something, and he ran into the airplane. So in my incident report, this is, what can we do to prevent this from happening again? So, I wrote, well, we need to clean up spilled spaghetti sauce. And my squadron commander didn't think that was very funny, but I thought it was accurate.
Well, yes, that would have done it.
All right. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
what did they eat that night then? Just for
Well,
fun?
no, just the bumping and all that, it was spilling over the top.
Okay, got it. It didn't actually.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
wonderful.
I don't know, you want to hear some more just crazy
I
stories?
sure do.
All right. There were different classifications of hazmat, and I don't remember the exact terminology, but if you had a class 5 hazmat, you could not carry anything else on the airplane.
Oh,
So that day, we were carrying sentry dogs. And sentry dogs, they're mean. These are not therapy dogs
Yeah,
like
yeah.
you see today. So we're going from, here to there, and I get a call, stop in such and such, you need to pick up something, it's Hazmat 5. Oh, God. So, and it's hot, the temperature is 100 degrees. So we land, we pull off, I tell them, okay, take the dogs off, we put them in the shade under the wing, and, and I'm waiting. So finally a Jeep comes out. There's a box this big. I took the box. I don't even know what was in it. I threw it into the airplane. I said, put the dogs back on. We're going there. So those are kind of, the things that happen.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, you had to make life work. And
Yeah.
a little story then. I was a left seat pilot, but we had a colonel that would come and fly once a month, to get his flight time. Well, I was his co-pilot. So one day I'm flying with him and we're coming in for a landing, and just jump back here. This particular airplane, when it stalls, most airplanes, they sort of fall nose down. The Caribou sort of just fell flat.
Oh my goodness.
So we're coming in for this landing, and I said, sir, I don't think we're going to make it. And he says, do you have a suggestion? I said, yeah, let's go to full flaps. And he said, okay, give me dump the flaps down. We're still way too high. And I said, oh, sir, we're still not going to make it. And we had some exchange. And I said, could I take the stick for a minute? So I stalled the airplane out. It falls until it looked right. Put the nose down, and we're flying again. I said, okay, sir, now you got it. We're going to land. He says, Lieutenant, he says, that's an illegal maneuver. And I said, sir, with all deference, I said, I fly here every day. We get shot at. I can't afford to do an approach a second time. We have to do it. And just deadpan look, he says, Lieutenant, that is an illegal maneuver. I said, sir, I'll never do it again. He said, you're smart. So
Oh
we
my
did things like
goodness.
that. And then just another little crazy story just about being over there. As I said, we could land in 300 feet with any kind of a headwind, even shorter. So when we would come into the big airfields, like Tonsanute or something, all the C-130s would be waiting there for takeoff, and we would land in the overrun and then taxi off in front of them. So somebody got a little upset over that, so they told us you had to go all the way down the runway. So again, being a motorcyclist, when we would land in any kind of a crosswind, it would be called a wing low system, so you'd be coming in sideways. So we'd come in and we'd do the landing, and as soon as we touched down, I'd add power to the downwind engine, and then we'd go all the way down the runway in one wheel.
Oh my gosh.
And all the mechanics, they're watching all the airplanes, so they see that, and they're all, laughing. And then because I knew the mechanics, sometimes if we did a late flight, they had to stay until all the planes returned.
Oh, sure.
So we would come in, at 9 o'clock at night or so. Now we're taxiing back in. I'd feather a prop. So they would see an airplane coming in with one engine shut down, and they say, oh my goodness, now we're going to have to work all night. And then they see it was me, and So, but those are the kind of things you did to amuse yourself and to make the best of a
It does sound to me like
situation.
you were very amusing.
Yeah. So.
Well, I'll tell you what, I could sit here and talk to you all day. I could.
Okay.
But I'll tell you what, I do want to thank you very, very much, Robert Bucher, for this, for your time in interviewing, and certainly thank you for your time for our country.
Well, Jeannie, I consider it a privilege that I have served the U.S. military. There was not a big fanfare in those days, but I thought it was a patriotic duty. I did it, and I was proud that I did it. And I look forward to being able to talk with people about it, which I do recruiting for the American Legion, but I respect all of our people that are in Afghanistan and other parts of the country, because freedom is not free, and they're working hard to hold on to what we have.
And we respect and appreciate you.
You're more than welcome.